Speaking of the Epstein files, the fallout continues, and now a bombshell email that was contained in the batch of files released by the Department of Justice shows some very interesting things, mainly that the disputed photo of Prince Andrew with Virginia Giuffre seems to have been validated by Ghislaine Maxwell in an email she sent to Jeffrey Epstein back in 2015. Now, you'll remember, before any of these files were released, Andrew always denied and said he had no recollection of that photo. In fact, here was him saying that on the record.
I've seen the photograph.
How do you explain that?
I can't. Because I have absolutely no memory of that photograph ever being taken.
He may not have any memory of it being taken, but that seems to directly contradict what has been put out in this new email from Ghislaine Maxwell. So it's not going well for him. The other person who is continuing to feel the heat over the Epstein fallout is Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Questions are now being raised as to how much he knew about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein before he was appointed ambassador to the US. Quite spectacularly, he actually admitted in question time that he did know about their relationship, and he certainly knew that Mandelson spent time at Jeffrey Epstein's apartment while he was being imprisoned for child prostitution offences. So it's not a great look for Starmer. His backbenchers have now rebelled against him, and a bunch of files are going to be released around exactly what Keir Starmer knew in the lead up to appointing him as ambassador. Instead of that going through the Cabinet Office, which no doubt would be more controlled by Keir Starmer and his allies, it's going to be put through an independent committee of MPs. Starmer is under incredible pressure. There's speculation this could actually be the thing that brings down his prime ministership. And here he was in question time in the UK today, and his hands were literally shaking.
Let me reassure the House, the process for deciding what falls into those categories will not be a political process. It will be led by the Cabinet Secretary, supported by government.
So he actually had to hold his hands down to stop them from shaking. James, it just seems like the fallout from this is continuing. I don't understand. We know Andrew is over. Of course, he denies all these allegations, but the damage is done. But for Keir Starmer, I mean, this is pretty damning.
Well, for Andrew, there was a damning photo of him driving away just the other day with a massive smile on his face. And the public did not react well to that. The last thing he should be doing right now is smiling. As for Keir Starmer, there was a poll done just the other day, Caleb. 44% of Brits say they are following the Epstein story, particularly with regards the man that Starmer appointed US ambassador. 44% of Brits say they're following this story, quote unquote, closely, which is a high proportion of the population for a news story. Most news stories come and go. What is it? Today's newspaper is tomorrow's fish and chip wrapper. Not so with this story. People are really invested in it. And for pretty much half the population to say we are watching this closely does speak to the fact, as Freya said, this could be the biggest problems Keir Starmer's got. And he's had a few.
Well, today's newspaper isn't even tomorrow's fish and chip wrapper these days. It's one of the things that's gone wrong with the world, I think. But there was another poll that found not only were 44% of people watching this story closely, 95% of people in Britain are at the very least aware of this story of Peter Mandelson and his connection to Jeffrey Epstein. Like that is, if you went down the street and asked people, like, who's the Prime Minister, not even 95% of people would be able to give you the answer. So this is cutting through terribly in Britain and, of course, around the world as well. Because the defence they're now running is that Mandelson lied about just how close his connections were to Jeffrey Epstein. But how do you, in the knowledge of the fact that he had an association with Epstein, which is becoming clearer by the day that the association was quite close. There's even photographs floating around of Mandelson getting around in Jeffrey Epstein merchandise back in 2009, which is when all of the real scandal was starting to begin, right? So in the knowledge that he had that association, knowing that the US was pursuing this stuff with Epstein and there was a high likelihood that the Epstein files would be released, he still thought he would appoint him. Now, Mandelson has got away with it for a very long time, and he's floated around in politics for a very long time and was instrumental in the Blair government and you know, he's been able to get away with it for ages. But that time is up. And Starmer should have had the foresight to know that that time was coming, and he didn't, and it will cost him the Prime Ministership. And how delicious that the person who's basically leading this rearguard action against Sir Keir Starmer is his former deputy, Angela Rayner, who of course was done over because of some dodgy tax filings. I mean, it's pure British politics. This stuff happens in Britain better than basically anywhere else. But it is just an awful case of bad political analysis.
And of course, Starmer's excuse is that, well, we did due diligence and he lied to us.
Well,
as if their due diligence is asking people a few questions and expecting that they will simply tell the truth with nothing to hide. But worse, as you said, they knew that he had a close relationship with Epstein, and so they shouldn't have taken his word for it that it's not that bad. They should have investigated everything.
They knew he was at Epstein's apartment when Epstein was in jail. I mean, to stay at somebody's house, you have to have a reasonably close relationship. The other thing that's also come out is while Peter Mandelson was business secretary, he sent market-sensitive information to Epstein on multiple occasions. Now, that's potentially something that could land him in prison. So this scandal still has a long way to run.
It sure does, and we'll be watching it closely.